quick introduction of myself, Joey Connect, one of the senior leaders with Proteus. I've been with the Proteus company for about 24 years now. And so look forward to sharing. And I've been on this product engaged probably the last 5 years. So look forward to sharing some of the lessons learned and some of the things, and always evolving. Obviously, as you know, here I'm preaching to the choir. Things related to complex sales and onboarding, especially in regulated industries. So as a little bit of backdrop, obviously, I'm with a company called Proteus, clearly, but we work with many of our clients are in regulated industries. And as I go through the presentation today, I'll kind of use probably more like a healthcare example. So any kind of professional services or software at other groups that are selling into and onboarding in healthcare, of course, financial services, finance, many other industries we also work with too that are regulated, but kind of sharing with you some secret notes around these processes and some of the challenges. Of course, we have a solution, but my aim as one of the leaders is to always make these webinars informational and tactical, meaning you can do something with the information right away. Because sometimes it's process related or kind of element related. Not always software isn't always the answer, even though we obviously have a platform. It's the engine to drive the success, but I really like to share just actionable things so that you feel like you're getting some value out of your Tuesday water day kind of experience here. So let's get started. So you've signed up for, and we're going to hold you accountable for it. Complex sales on delivering security, trust, and clarity in regulated industries. Gotta love that title. So let's jump into it. Oh, I should note, I always forget this. If you have any comments, it's a one-man show here. So if you have any comments or questions, go ahead, pipe that into the comments area and I'll get back to you. As I mentioned, I'll be sharing all of the information clearly at the end. And you can, follow up accordingly if you have some sort of, ideation you would like to go through. So a couple of things, and again, kind of frame. I always like to frame sometimes numbers, sometimes other things, but looking at B2B sales in regulated industries and onboarding in regulated industries, it's a silo game. It's a lot of people. There's a lot of things going on, and kind of from our own numbers and of course conversations at the greater level in complex regulated industries. And again, my assumption here is this product or service you're selling is over 10 grand in value. It really becomes a very complicated and heavy stakeholder based experience. So you have the buyers and then you have stakeholders, and those decision makers, of course, are the buyers. So we're going to kind of unpack that a little bit because that's where quite a bit of the complexity comes in. And also that is the same thing on onboarding. And so there's a lot of risk on the table here, obviously, and it's getting dare I say, riskier every single day. So I'm sure you're seeing this in your day-to-day operations, whether you're on the sales side, the handoff, or the onboarding side of the equation. Some of you or all of them, right? You're wearing multiple hats. It's just a crap ton of people, and they all basically have kind of a different role, ROLE, on the transaction also. So we're going to penetrate that a little bit because that's where if you're selling, that's where deals go to die. That's what we like to say. And then in onboarding, that's when deals take 7 years to deploy. This is kind of obviously a joke, but let's get into it. So some big risks on the table, right? And some of you have been in other webinars of ours. I have one slide that pretty much I continuously show because it is an environmental kind of thing, and the complexity and siloing has just astronomically ballooned, right? And so you got all of these different stakeholders, you guys on the left side, right? Client is on the right-hand side, all sorts of people. For simplicity's sake, I didn't make 10 bubbles on each side. But again, you have, well, quite frankly, many of you have silos within your own company, and then you're deploying or selling into a prospect or client, and they also have silos, right? And there's a lot of stakeholders. So it's a many to many relationship. And this is why success via email is not a recipe to win, right? And so just fundamentally, the environment has dramatically changed. And one of the underlying themes, especially in regulated industries, we're going to kind of talk to today, and most importantly, share ways to battle plan and to win, is there are kind of different roles, as I mentioned earlier, but also there are the actual decision makers, and then there is going to be anywhere from 5 to 10 people that are joining that really don't care about your solution per se or the value you're bringing. They're just trying to de-risk the transaction. And so we're going to kind of penetrate, and they're very, very important. They can kill the deal. But ultimately, um, you got to learn how to handle those, especially in regulated industries. So there's the buyers and then there's the stakeholders. And we're going to unpack that to really help not only successfully on the sales side, but then of course on the onboarding side. And of course, today is more of a generality per se. I'm talking about sales and obviously onboarding. Each one of these cases, actually every slide I show you today could literally itself be its own webinar, but I'm trying today to provide kind of at least a high level solution set. And then of course, we have additional resources to drill in more. So let's continue. So again, environmental. First thing, obviously, is you want to kind of understand the ecosystem, the environment. This is how you're living today. I'm very, very confident on that level with everybody on this call. Like it's just the reality. The second thing, which is also a reality, whether you're doing the sales portion of this or the onboarding portion of this, is to effectively do your job. You have to be moving a tremendous amount of data back and forth between, if you're selling, obviously, to the prospect, if you're onboarding to the obviously the team internally, whether it's a professional services project, a technology deployment, a SaaS deployment, an on-prem deployment, anything. There's a tremendous amount of data and information that has to go back and forth, right? And be managed. And again, in regulated industries, there's extreme pressure to do this in a secure way, whether that's, it's HIPAA, whether it's SOC 2, other stuff, right? Like it's mission critical that this information isn't just floating around in anybody's emails or the open land, right? And so it's not only we got a crap ton of people, that is a very professional way of saying that. You got a lot of cats. Now you got to herd them all, and then you're now got to pass a lot of information back and forth. And this is in many cases in sales before you've even got them across the line, right? This is obviously just still in the qualification process. So there's a lot of people and there's a lot of information. So let's look at kind of from, if you're the seller on the call today, or many of you might be SME, subject matter experts. And what we see very, very commonly now is onboarding team members are joining the last 25% of the sales process. Now, it might not be exactly 25 for you, but the way I always like to frame it, it's like, let's say you've been dating somebody for a long period of time, and then you're like, we're getting married. Everybody now wants to get involved, right? So it's that last 25%. That's all I'm saying there. But it could be for your product the last 10%, or for some of you the last 50%. But in spirit, I think you get where I'm going here. It's where we're kind of going from it's nice to like we're getting serious. Okay. So what that brings about is these kind of challenges. And bear with me, these are a little heavier than I usually like, but I do that because I'm going to send these to you, and so you can rip off and duplicate, which is professionally called R&D. And so I encourage you to do that. So what happens here is we're getting into the sports metaphor of the red zone now, right? And so, as I said, all these other people start getting involved. And again, we're wearing our complex sales hat here. We're going to do two actually, I know, two on complex sales and five on onboarding, but they're kind of a little bit interrelated here. Okay. So complex sales, we're in the red zone. So you've been working with the internal champ of the organization, right? The main person on the sales side. Again, focus, we're selling here. And then as we start to get deeper into the sales process, again, last 25%, all of a sudden a massive amount of additional people are going to start to coming into the transaction, right? So you've been demoing, you've been talking about a project idea, or whatever it might be, whatever you're doing. Then it gets to a point where all of these other personas start to come into. So I'll use that word a lot, personas or stakeholders. These are just the groups of people, because there might be one or more in all of these that are going to start joining the process. And as I said, I'm doing this kind of from a healthcare example. And that's why I put the clinical and operational committees, right? It's going to be all sorts of people. You might have 25 people on that. Like it starts to get really, really blown out here in the sales process still, right? And so you got all of these different persona types. And what I put down there is the key insight here. They're actually not judging whether or not you're good, like what your product or service is. They really are not. They're evaluating the enterprise risk of you to their environment, whether that's from a security perspective, are you easy to work with, pricing and like all of these things that I'm showing you on the screen. So now you got a sales process that has the original person with air quote the need, right? They need a new, let's just call it a clinical software here. And you're selling into this process, but now all of these different stakeholders and people are, any one of these people, even a half of one of these people can kill your deal, right? And so you have to kind of understand that from the sales process, there's fit or business case, but then there's also alignment and managing the risk of onboarding you into that. So frequently organizations do really good on the wow and this is awesome, the product and everything, but really, really drop the ball on understanding that all of these other individuals are equally as important, if not more important than the actual buyer per se, right? And a funny story or anecdote to this, again, from the buying perspective, it is not it is not now uncommon. Wow. It is not uncommon now. I think, yeah, it's not uncommon now that in enterprise, especially like software sales, or if you're a SaaS product or any kind of solution like that, even hardware, like the first question before the client will even take a meeting is talk to me about your security and all of this stuff. They're actually pre-qualifiers to even having the meeting, right? That's how important de-risking the transaction is to these organizations in complex sales, right? In regulated industries. So that's a very important thing, especially if you're thinking sales is sales, it's not, right? This is where your SMEs have to come in. This is where maybe your own security people have to join the transaction. It makes it extremely more complicated and a lot of areas where you can fail and be kicked out extremely quickly if you're taking too long to get information or you're not answering their questions in a specific manner, all sorts of things. I think you see what's going on here. It's a very big piece of regulated sales now. The second piece of this is going to kind of expand this a little bit to help you kind of do this, right? So what I did here is on that healthcare one, just kind of knocking it down into actually what they're looking for, right? So if you think about your own sales process, and again, in some cases, this might actually be during the onboarding process too, right? Just depends. But ultimately, it's aligning their needs, or I like to call it if you're, I'm 48, but like the fawns, like jumping the shark, right? Like you just know it's coming. So how do you attack and work on this? And this really comes into whether it's a complex sale or onboarding. What we're always looking for is multi-threading, basically multiple paths going on at the same time. Whether if it's sales, I'll use the cool word velocity, right? If it's onboarding, it's going to be TTV, time to value. You're always looking to get things done faster, right? And instead of linearly trying to attack each one of these problems, you want to splinter out, right? And so immediately in that sales process, you're going to be attacking, each one of these stakeholder types and roles so that you can move them across the line faster. And it helps obviously build that trust, right? So, this isn't your first rodeo. You've seen this before. We know what's coming. So you're equipping your internal champ, again, if it's a sales process, with kind of these kits and go to markets. Obviously, we do them through our workspaces, but ultimately driving them through. And what I put there is at the bottom there, success just from the field. Um, we do a lot of this jumping the shark kind of stuff with aligning with the internal champion. Of course, we're very big on mutual plans and kind of outlining the process for all of this, because again, equipping during the sales process, 90% of the time you're not in the room. So how do you provide that internal champ a toolkit basically to be successful, right? And mutual planning it, which if you're gonna, that's like the number one thing. Like, it's not just about you, it's equipping people for success so they can fight your fight when you're not around internally with all of these persona types here, right? So very, very important on how to close that deal. And sometimes I like to say words paint pictures a lot of the time. So in that presumptive sale experience, which you're like, I know I'm going to sell this to you, you do a tonal switch, and that's from selling to de-risking, right? And so de-risking, which allows you to kind of switch up the expectation management, and it also allows you to do this multi-thread. This also allows you to sometimes control the narrative much more, because if you're prepared, then you can control the narrative to de-risk basically somebody saying the wrong thing internally, missed expectations, right? All sorts of things can happen in this process. So for us and our clients, and just from our proof, is that in complex sales, as you get to this latter part of the deal, of course, the business case and all those things, very, very important. But as you drive through, these are very critical in complex sales in that last 20% of the sale. So that's from the purview of the complex sales experience. Now we're going to kind of shift gears into a little bit of, from an onboarding perspective, how this kind of continues on and still is very, very dangerous. As if you've been reading or listened to other stuff from us or anything, it's pretty well known in onboarding. You're going to be ranging anywhere from 15 to 30% of your churn is going to be derivative of your onboarding process. So especially in regulated industries, because if you mess up, you're out. So what we're going to talk about here, just spiritually, is solving the five in the regulated space, because this is a little bit different than if they're not regulated. Doesn't mean these don't count in regular non-regulated industries, because I I was joking with some coworkers, and you guys are in the regulated space probably, but like, which space isn't regulated now? Like, it was kind of like, it used to be, yeah, I think everybody's, hopefully you're laughing and chuckling, but it seems like everything's regulated now. But let's jump in. um okay, so the first thing I always like to talk about here is the client really doesn't want your stuff, right? Like, at the end of the day, they're busy, they already got a lot of crap going on, and a lot of the times they're not excited about hearing they're getting something new. And so that's just a brutal reality, right? Like, let's just own it, like, be aware of it. And they're scared as hell, because it's going to take up their time, and if this thing goes south, they could be in trouble, right? We always joke, I always joke, I don't know, it's like an industry joke, but like, when you're like, if you're deploying like a new ERP, enterprise resource planning, right? The person who bought that is either president within 2 years or fired. Like, the deployment of that, the onboarding of that, literally is the future of their career. And in many cases, this might be the perception or the reality of some of the things you're deploying. So people's jobs are on the line, and in a lot of cases, or their, as you know, their institutional credit, let's call it that, or tokens, right? Like, are on the line. So two sides. It's always a two-sided thing here. And so it's not only you, but then also obviously the new company and new client. And so I always like to have the backdrop of that as we go through some of these use cases, because it's mutual. It's not a, one side is more important than the other. You got to do things in a mutual way for success, especially in regulated industries. So as a framework, I always like to kind of set the tone. So here's some of the realities. So even as you go through procurement, a lot of the times in onboarding, because we kind of consider this now, you're moving into it, there's going to be additional, and again, we're kind of shifting into the more onboarding phase, kind of approved, but now we're starting to go through quite a few things here. And so you're going to have a lengthy procurement and additional, sorry, more people coming in, lengthy and additional IT approvals. Now, this can happen kind of while the contract is being done, right? Like, there's different phases where this comes in, where the deal has been initially approved, and now it's
That
going
is
through
an
some.
open phone ticket.
Yep, that is right. Let me.
Okay, please tell me what Microsoft product are you?
That's awesome. Yeah, support Microsoft product. It's almost any Microsoft product you need to talk to support. So So lengthy procurement and approvals, right? So this is where, again, this is kind of sometimes in that handoff phase of the onboarding, but also really critical, clearly. And this is where again, you probably know some of these, but again, I'll repeat them. The parallel tracks, we break everything down into different things so we can start moving. Readiness kit. So this is something you might not be thinking about, but a lot of the times, we always say when you're onboarding, the client doesn't know what they don't know. But there's a presumption a lot of times by the onboarder, aka the group that just sold it in, that the client knows everything and knows what to do and knows how to handle everything, where a lot of times they don't. So a lot of times teeing them up for success with basically kits, prefab information. We literally, a lot of our clients, um, when you're onboarding a new product or service or anything into a company, like they're giving many of the stakeholders email templates of how to communicate about this product or service to their employees, right? Really key glove, yeah, key glove. What is that? Yeah, something like that. But basically teeing them up for really, really strong success in the messaging, the why, and everything that is coming here in the future. So really think about that templating of some of the messaging, even internal. I will always say that's very big to get the momentum swinging in the right direction for a lot of the stuff that you're going for. And that's what that offer the internal training for champions. Some of this is when you're onboarding, a lot of the times you're in essence reselling. And bear with me on what I'm saying there. Obviously, you're not issuing contracts or anything, but a lot of times you're handing off to a different team internally and they don't understand the why. They don't understand, maybe all the benefits or the deployment, because this is where a lot of those changes come. Because when you're into selling, everybody thought it was here, but then when you actually get to the people who are doing it and actually deploying it, a lot of times the scope changes, right? And I think many of you are probably chuckling, or you might find out sales said it can do this and we don't even do that, right? Or things around that gray area there. So there's a lot of re-education or reselling that is going on there, but that's just the first step in regulated, because really like to over communicate and really tee them up for success on quite a few things there. um so this kind of blows out more of what I was just talking about, expectation management disconnect. And so a lot of times, especially in the more complex system or things, there's just still a lot of people who are not aligned on where we're going here. And so a lot of the times this has to be communicated repeatedly. And as I put here again, customized messaging per persona. We have a lot of times now, this might not be the buying persona people. Again, this is going to be the deployment persona people, which can be different personas in your deal. And you know who they are if you just look at your average onboarding. What are the title types that are actively involved in the onboarding and or adjacent to that? That's going to be your personas. Okay. And then ultimately, again, via we like mutual plans, what does success look like? I We have a whole concept called pre-mortems that I swear by. For clients love them. It's if we know what failure looks like, why is it going to fail? Like, why is this onboarding going to fail? And you do that before it, you're going to unearth a lot of those things, and those all go into your mutual plan for success. And then here's another weapon that is frequently missed in complex sales, especially complex onboardings, um, in regulated industries. You should be doing this in all, but regulated, it also, because typically regulated, it's going to be a bigger deal, more money, more people, biggie smalls, more problems, is nominating an executive sponsor. So this is kind of, so you have the internal champion who was used and a partner during the sales process, but when you nominate an executive sponsor, this is somebody who needs to be aware of what, and that's going to be your mutual plan, so that they're guided, they know what's going on, but they're the leverage to help also keep everything, if misalignment surfaces or something comes up that isn't optimal for the onboarding. So there's the internal champ, but then I'll call it what it is. Sometimes you need the enforcer or some muscle to push things through if there was a problem or something pops up, and it's not that it was negative, it's just sometimes you need, especially if you're going to be prioritizing things sometime. And what I mean by prioritizing, we'll get to it here in a slide, is you're still in a race to show value, obviously, in regulated industries. And so sometimes you got to mix things up a little bit. And I'll cover that here in a second. But you need the internal champ and then the executive sponsor. Now, that executive sponsor, if you're lucky, maybe was involved during the sales process also, and they just carry through. But again, equipping them with visibility via mutual plans and other things is going to make them that much more powerful in supporting your vision of getting this live. Okay. The next one, again, data security and compliance. This is, I don't want to say I'm beating you know, beating on this too much, but ultimately you need to revisit how you're handling how all of this stuff is being communicated, delivered, and shared internally with the key stakeholders, not only during the sales process, but then also on the onboarding process, and just making sure, because they can kill the deal in a millisecond. And so this is just truly really focusing on making sure you have all of the information available and it's getting to the right stakeholders. We hear horror stories, literally horror stories of like deals and onboardings being delayed by compliance to the tune of 6 months to a year because they got one chance to make that first impression, or you never get a second chance to make that first impression, and the first impression sucked and they got pushed to the end of the line, and basically you're just sitting there making no money, and really can be disastrous, and or you just get deal killed out and the onboarding just ultimately fails. And so it's real important to address these in your mutual plan, in the onboarding, but multi-threading. You're doing 3 to 4 things consistently to all these different stakeholders to expedite the onboarding process. And again, build trust. You know it's coming, so be prepared and have a model to deliver it and a model to measure it. This also comes up quite a bit in regulated industries. Um, is customization and integration kind of complexities, again, because a lot of times these are larger dollar value things and they're bespoke a little bit. And so there's just additional things. Again, I go to process as king on all of this to build that trust and confidence. And so again, thinking about your onboarding in tracks by segment, so that you're showing milestones. I'll talk about this here in a minute, but when complicated deployments are going on, you want to show kind of wins and celebrations. And so a lot of the times by segmenting it or tracking it or having milestones, you can create a lot of celebratory and keep that momentum of what's going on both sides, right? Because sometimes you're rallying your own team, obviously, not only the client's team to get this out there. And if your product has a tremendous amount of configuration, this I've done many presentations of like, oh, there's so many different levels of configuration that your team might be doing, their team might be doing, some in the middle. How are you passing data back and forth? That's that take intake forms, like anything you can do to structure the data collection. So we always are big about GIGO, garbage in, garbage out, which is a huge problem in onboarding. And so if you have to be collecting a lot of data from your customer to do the configuration on your side, then we recommend like structured forms like we have or other ways so that the data is clean, it's validated, helps you expedite that process, and it tremendously helps. Plus, it sets the right expectation on the customer side, all via kind of a mutual plan ecosystem, which again is the obviously the overarching phases or track/segments. The modular implementation. But the reason why we put that in there is in the de-risking spirit of a lot of the clients. They're wanting to maybe start simple and then get what I would call the Kia, the Camry, and then the Cadillac, right? And kind of naturally progress through um, functionality, and maybe level of integration or data, access and stuff. This is also very important. There's just tremendous amount of pressure to show return on investment really quickly a lot of times. And so if you can break the deployment up, now this creates a whole other set of problems that we talk about, which is modern clients in regulated industries, really any industry, you're never done onboarding. What I mean by that is because things are phased, because clients pilot and try or do this and this, you're consistently onboarding. Or they bought just module one. Now you're cross-selling them module two, module three. You're basically in consistent onboarding mode. So it's a very big challenge for a lot of teams where it used to be you just get a client, you onboard them, ship them out, yay, ship them off to CS, and they're done. The reality is for many companies, technology firms, even professional services and others, it's continuous onboarding. Like we're hopefully expanding them in the tool set continuously and repeating everything I just said over and over and over again. Not all the elements, but many of the elements. All right. So if you can do modular, that's going to really help your team out because you can be targeted about that and scaling it out, which obviously is strategically put right before this slide, which is proving value without violating compliance boundaries. So this is where the aforementioned um, executive stakeholder kind of comes into play, right? Because okay, let's just be candid. This is how it comes into play: is you have the executive sponsor who has cut the check more than likely for your product or service. They're under pressure to deliver some sort of ROI and probably extremely fast, right? They want to show a win, right? And quite frankly, you want to win also because if you help them win, then obviously there's an opportunity to cross sell, upsell more modules, and ta-da. So when you're in the early stages of the onboarding, a lot of the times you might restructure the onboarding to identify the quickest win or a win based on the compliance boundaries. Now, I can't tell you exactly what that is because everything's a little bit different, but it also relates to what resources are available from the internal team that might you could quickly leverage to get that piece of the onboarding live and measuring real outcomes. Again, making sure you're not, you know, curtailing the um, compliance elements of that. You want to stay within the guardrails of that. But if it allows you to move product, service, ideas faster that are measurable, that's going to give you really nice momentum into, the spirit. And I also put in there those micro milestones. They might sound a little ridiculous or like, really, Joe, like we really care about the first login. Actually, yeah, you do if it's a tech thing because it's a celebratory milestone showing that the teams are working together. What you do with that, that's your call, but it is emotional and onboarding, right? It is on both sides. And being able to celebrate and create those positive momentums and kudos for both sides, it's very, very important. And that ties in with obviously the lower points there is if it functionally if it's technology or a project or something, if it's now generating ROI, measurable real numbers that you can share with the stakeholders and the team, that propels everybody into a very positive mode of like, let's keep going, let's get the rest out, this is really exciting. All right, so a lot of the times it's for us, it's about communication, collaboration, getting everybody obviously on the same page, mutual plan concepts, of course, sharing all data. But then that's there's art and science here, right? Everybody knows that, right? And so the art pieces of this is the strategy that I've been sharing here. Obviously, the engines to run all this, clearly that's what we do. But ultimately, how this can help you in those complex industries is obviously targeting by the persona, creating that ecosystem for clear communication and collaboration to unearth problems because there's going to be problems. It's just about finding them faster. That's all it is, right? Like literally, that's all it is, and keeping them at smoke and not fires, right? And then progressing them through and getting them to a TTV, time to value, in a faster manner as much as you can, based on bifurcating out, hopefully, the people, the processes, and then, of course, obviously, if you can, a lot of times you can't, but if you can, 50% of the time you typically can, modify the onboarding to give you a quick win for this quarter or whatever your milestones are to drive that through. Hopefully that hopefully that makes sense. um it's not easy, obviously, but ultimately these five things packaged correctly and then obviously delivered effectively inside the tool set can be very, very valuable for your time to value, again, on deployment one and also all future deployments. I do know, and I won't go through those because I like to keep our presentations right around this level, but I do know the proof is always in the performance. So by structuring these correctly, like I just walked you through, they can really drive a lot of additional value to the organization pretty quickly. One, standardizing your processes, standardizing all of this can create 30 to 40% efficiency, literally, for your team. When I say your team, I'm talking about the onboarding side, okay, and sales, of course. On the client side, by having this all structured, can boost engagement. We see frequently 70%, meaning things are all centralized. It's really helping. It's driving people across the line very, very successfully. Not going to get into it in this presentation, but once you have everything centralized and you're not using email to manage complex things, ultimately you're able to hone your templates over time to drive even faster time to value, TTV. There's again about 12 other metrics we like to also measure a lot of our onboardings against, which you can find those resources on the site or other webinars that we've talked about that. So to give you just a glance, and again, you didn't sign up for a demo, and I'm not going to demo. I'm just going to show you just high level what the heck I'm talking about from just a technical perspective, so it can spur some ideation on your side. Because again, I try to just equip you for success. So as I'm moving screens here, you got a bad lighting situation today. All right. So clearly, I'm Joey with Proteus, so you guys knew we had a solution. So let me just walk you through how we do this, and it works. Obviously, that's what we're proud of it. But this is a workspace. This is a customer facing. I'll repeat that 3 times: customer facing, customer facing, customer facing. It's also internal facing for you. And so, but we drive success because it's mutual. It's a two-way transaction. Fully integrated with Salesforce, fully integrated with HubSpot, fully integrated with a ton of stuff, your email, Slack, Teams, you name it. It's fully integrated, fully secure to make sure everything that you're doing with, in case, let's just go with the use case I've been doing, a hospital, knock it out of the park. People on the left, your team, hospital people, obviously a lot more folks there. We do a ton in obviously discovery and sales, B2B sales, mutual plans there. Very, very impressive. Obviously navigating all those different personas. Same thing here. Classic onboarding mutual plan. This probably doesn't surprise anybody. Launch strategy call, obviously all your different personas, all your different, this in this case, this is a pilot one. You might have tasking internally and externally, right? You're tasking out to the client, you're tasking into your internal. Again, most of these, quite frankly, are automated, built on templates and all sorts of very intriguing things that we have, obviously, to help with the efficiencies and reproducibility. It's not a lot of work at all. It's mostly just set up one time, and then we just rinse and repeat and optimize there with you. But the point of showing the screen is that the key to success is taking the methodologies we've been talking about and then putting them into the engine to execute those at scale, at volume, be able to securely transfer data back and forth via the tool, whether it's file sharing, obviously data collection like forms or anything like that, of course, are done through the tool. All of these processes are here. And then this also creates for you a tremendous amount of visibility on how things are progressing on each client at any point in time. And again, there's your team and then the client's team. Obviously, the internal champ and the executive shareholder or stakeholder are going to have access to exactly what you're seeing here, controlled by who they are. So everything is persona controlled here. So you can control what persona sees what here on everything. And from there, then you're managing the deployment. So think of this as your command center to be able to target the people you want to be able to target, get them the pertinent information on time, ahead of schedule, and measure the progress across everything that is going on. It's tactical. Yes, that's how it works. And so by going through like the slides I was just walking through, I'm just taking that and inverting that into how that's actually deployed. How's that managed? How do you have complete visibility on everything that is going on during your onboarding process? Again, this also relates to complex sale and the handoff. So just to bring it to life, this is what we're talking about. This is the level that we get clients to really yeah, it's massive impact. Like just it's fun. That's why I do these. So I appreciate your time. I'm going to package all this up, share it out with you. Lots of resources on our website. If you haven't checked out our insights area. You're going to find a ton of information there about like all the onboarding stuff, the measuring, a lot of the key metrics we like to work with clients on. But I will say this: start simple, right? Start simple. Start, analyzing top key personas, and then over time you can build all of this out to really help, especially your security side, all the different stakeholders on that, to really drive success and amplify deal velocity, and of course, uh, the onboarding side. So again, appreciate everybody's time today. If you have any immediate questions, please Slack, or just message in the meeting, and I'll answer you there. I do also offer for anybody, and this is leveraged quite a bit, which is great. I do offer one-on-one consultations where, again, I'm not gonna demo you. You're gonna tell me where your environment and what's going on. And a lot of times people just have questions about like, how would you handle this? How would you handle that? No problems. I offer that to anybody. So I'll share out my calendar on my follow-up. So again, appreciate everybody's time. Happy Tuesday. Good luck with the rest of your week. Hopefully a couple of nuggets of knowledge for actual impact for your team today. Thanks, everybody.